Center of the University of New York. Sonia's dissertation research looks at state, medical, institutional, and community-based responses to domestic violence in South Asian immigrant communities in New York City, primarily during the post-9/11 war on terror, to interrogate relationships between race, gender, sexuality, migration, health, national and domestic security, and prison policing. Her work centralizes possibilities for transformational justice that transcends state-driven responses to community violence. Sonia's academic work is informed by over 15 years of experience with anti-domestic violence efforts, as well as her participation in immigrant rights and queer and trans justice organizing work in people of color communities. She is a former Malvi staff member, and she'll go ahead and introduce the panel.
For a question and answer and discussion with the audience as well. So I'm happy to introduce the three panelists. All the way to my left is Anissa Sen, who I'm going to introduce everyone at the same time. Anissa currently serves as the support chair for the Salga New York City, where she creates and implements support strategies such as the support group and the hotline for the South Asian LGBTQ community in the tri-state region and beyond. She is administrator at ALIGN, standing for Alliance for a Greater New York, managing office systems, human resources, and finances. Anissa has more than 15 years of experience working with nonprofit and academic institutions in the areas of project management, administration, technology, communications, teaching, translation, and conflict resolution. He issues in New York City. He also served on the steering committee of South Asian Lesbian and Gay Organization from 2002 to 2004. And right to my left is Ashok Vishwanathan, who is a mathematics graduate from St. Xavier's College, Kolkata, and is a postgraduate in Institute in 1986. Since then, he has been active in both film and video media as a director, screenplay writer, actor, and presenter, having directed more than 150 films and television programs, including feature films, documentaries, telefilms, music videos, and teleserials. Mr. Vishwanathan has a very extensive bio that I urge you to read in the program. He's won many awards, and Anissa, if you want to start, we can go. I think you have to flip it up.
Here.
I think that this sort of positive, it's a very positive film for the most part, and I think that there's a lack of that in the general society. Generally speaking, in our South Asian context, homosexuality is either hidden or reviled. It's generally not shown in a positive light, and I think there's definitely...
And also involved in South Asian community, and it's never been... it's a given that most of the community is homophobic. That, you know, that homophobia that's always in the background of the movie, it's everywhere. You know, it's here in Edison, it's there in Queens, it's when I say there's a positive thing, that just means that, for instance, there's an audience like this, or there are friends of mine, some of them are in the documentary and they have parents, you know, and there's Pradeep, and, you know, there's straight friends that we have, where it's perfectly fine. For finally at this age, I'm almost 39, but in my 20s I didn't know, but we were all like in 20s when I was in my 20s, but there was no other generation I had ever known where it was fine to be gay. So, you know, it was like always women at college with me, and they're like, yeah, that's fine, my parents don't like gay people, I'm cool. But now they have children who have grown up, and they also accept you, you know, so you're like their uncle, you know, which I hate to, you know, I feel really old. So, you know, and, you know, your siblings and your cousins have all accepted, but this, you know, I mean, she referred to a different topic about, you know, this internalized homophobia, these cultural pressures, they're still there. Many of us have been just lucky. So even these spaces are unknown to most people that sometimes come to us with problems. I mean, I've also worked in Salga. I was actually just discussing with Sonia and Anissa that, you know, recently we've had a call where this guy was really, he wanted to kill himself because of the, you know, he's, I mean, I'm not going to give away the story, but it was basically cultural pressure where he had been forced into a marriage and he couldn't live up to be the husband that everybody was expecting him to be. And he's a very successful guy. And then everybody finds out that he's gay. And then suddenly the you know, this star child, you know, who was so successful and married, he's like worse than, you know, an animal for his family. They're like, oh, don't ever come and talk to us. So that's what happens. Everything he's ever known is just, it just breaks down. And he doesn't know people like us because he's not hanging out with us. You know, he's in his own normal, desi life that he's always lived. And, you know, he didn't grow up here. So, and even when he came here, there's all this, that's where he actually figured out that he was gay. But stories like that, periodically, I mean, even when I was at Salga, we got a call from a teenager, and he said he was going to kill himself, and 3 days later he did kill himself. It was in New Jersey. So, these sort of, that homophobia, that, you know, the word...
To whoever wants to answer. The movie Fire, which really got a lot of fire, yes, when it was released, we all know. Do you think it would have done well now, if it was released now? The kind of response it would have got now would have been a little more different than what it got some years ago when it was, you know, like, there's a furor and, yes, it created a sensation in Indian society. How could it would make a difference now?
It's a complicated question. I think possibly, but I think there's also, we're all a little bit in danger of thinking that things are very different in India. They aren't that different, at least in the smaller towns. My mother's family is from Rajasthan, and my aunts actually went to the theater and prevented it from being burnt down while this movie was being shown, and they insisted, they said, we have a right to see this film. They're all straight, traditional women, but they wanted the film to be shown. And right now, from what I've seen, and I go back to India relatively frequently, it's not that different. So I would hope, my hope would be yes, that it should be different because 377 has been read down. And perhaps in Delhi, Bombay, places that are bigger, it might be different, but I'm not sure in a place like Jaipur, it would necessarily be different.
Just add to that, there's one problem with Fire. You see, because it doesn't treat the issue straight on, head on. There is the other aspect of these women being very lonely and neglected by their husbands. So this complicates the issue, you know. Doesn't become a lesbian, bisexual, gay, transgender, queer, you know, situation.
Educate me and maybe others about the genesis of homosexuality. You know, this question about nature versus nurture. You know, is it genetic, you're born with it, or is it an option or a choice that you choose later on in your life? And then also related to it, why so much now? Is it just that our society is now more open? Or, you know, are the examples of homosexuality in, I don't know, mythology or hundreds of years ago, or is it something, you know, changing genetically or socially?
We'll ask a few more, get a few more questions.
It has changed in diaspora, especially it has gone up. Or is it evident in the fact like suicide rates among homosexual community has come down, or forced marriages have come down? Are you seeing that trend recently?
Hi, thank you for your comments. Those were great comments. I was wondering, I have a question about the film. You know, it was a positive film, and that's what makes it really accessible and leaves you with a sense of hope and optimism. But I was wondering about class issues, right? All the positive stories were about, they were all speaking in English, these were all middle, upper class women. And the one, that sad story was that of Bali, right, who clearly belongs in a different socioeconomic class. So as an audience member, I'm watching this film, I'm thinking, is homosexuality more acceptable in that class? I mean, so does the film end up sort of setting up that kind of hierarchy? I wondered about that.
Yeah, we'll take those two.
So my question is like sort of very similar to hers. It's because, so my question is, how does it relate when it comes to age? Because like initially they showed an interview where there was a mother and a daughter, and the mother was like, I just can't accept it, but the child was okay with it. So you think that this is a problem that's there right now, but as time goes on and the number of people who grew up with hearing stories like this are going to be a lot more acceptable, or do you think people of the same age are equally unaccepting of this idea?
Thanks for the comments. It's been really fun. I'd like to echo the class question because I think that's really interesting. But along with that, I was just wondering, and the film tried to get into this a little bit, but what the role of religion is in this whole story, and particularly the role of different religions and what that has to play. Because I sense that even in this country, religion has a very important role to play when it comes to people and their relationships and being LGBT and whatnot.
I wanted to ask a question about bullying, homophobia and bullying. I mean, they kind of, how easy or difficult, I mean, in this society, talking about not just South Asians, but somebody who is LGBTQ, and he or she might have to go through, a lot of stress as such to be acceptable in a society. I mean, I would like to know your perspectives about that.
Okay. So, address the first question. As far as whether it's been there in our history, for sure. That's a short answer. And at least in Hinduism, there are lots of examples of gods and goddesses going through gender transformations. There's a form of Shiv that is half man, Ardhanari, half man, half woman. And also there's a lot of, in our literature, in ghazals, in stories, in all sorts of different parts of our historical literature, there's lots of references to same-sex love. And a good person to read on that is a woman named Ruth Venita. She's written a number of books, same-sex love in India, and she's done a lot of research on ancient and medieval literature. So that's for sure something that you should check out if you're interested. And as far as nature versus nurture, that's pretty much the big question. And my response to that is, it's as much nature as heterosexuality is. And I don't see that there's really that much of a difference between the two. The only difference is acceptance. So because heterosexuality is accepted, it's considered natural, whereas if homosexuality is not as accepted, therefore it's considered a choice. That's my personal opinion. There's a lot of research been done on it, and basically the answer has also been it's nature for the most part. That would be the class. Well, can I just say one more thing? Sorry. I like to talk. One more, as far as the class and those issues, I think really a lot of reason that all of this is hitting the fan, so to speak, is because it's become politicized. It's become a question of identity. It's not just a question of behavior. Homosexual behavior has been happening in South Asia since heterosexual behavior has been happening in South Asia. What's changed is politics. We want acceptance. We want an identity. We want to be recognized. And that is what's causing the big problems, in my opinion.
The class question, because I also noticed that, I couldn't really, except when Balli's mother, that's more like my mother. They don't speak English. My brother doesn't speak English. They're not an English-speaking family. But that doesn't mean I don't know people like that. There are people I know who are from poorer and more working class and more non-English speaking communities in this city and back home who are fine. So I wouldn't want to give only these English-speaking upper-class people the privilege of thinking that they're the only ones who have figured it out, because there are people who have figured it out. And they find all kinds of ways of justifying, like that woman who quotes ghazal by somebody. Akbar, yeah, sorry. So it's fine. So she says, oh, that actually helped me. I've heard that from friends. So I have friends actually in New York City. There are about 6 or 7 transgender Pakistani and Indian from very lower middle class backgrounds. They don't speak any English. One works as a hairdresser. The other one works as a cleaner, actually, at a mall in Manhattan. And their parents have been very accepting. So of course because they didn't speak English, they came from villages. Their life in the US is very much at the bottom of where they could be, and but they are there, you know. One of my friends actually told me, she said that when, she was 5 years old, the mother was like, oh, I'm just going to dress you up as a girl because I'm not going to waste money on buying you boys' clothes because you don't want to be a boy, because he wanted to be a girl. So he's like, my mother never said anything. She's like, here you are, you're a girl. So this is a poor woman from old city in Lahore. And so yeah, there is, of course, those conversations can continue. That must be the filmmaker's own background and the kind of circles that she is in, the kind of neighborhood she grew up in, the kind of family she comes from. But definitely, you could see that the issue is much, much bigger, even if the movie didn't really capture all of it.
Hasn't been a problem, but from what I've seen, at least in India, I don't see it as so much as religion as class and access. So if you have access to resources and you have access to awareness, then there tends to be more acceptance. I can't say that I've seen a lot of difference between the way Hindus, say, respond to the news of a gay child than, say, a Muslim person. I mean, it seems to be pretty equal to me, but I don't know. At least in India, I don't know.
I grew up in a Muslim family, and I think a lot of these sort of very strict, like Christianity, Islam. I'm not going to go into other religions because, but there are codes that you must live by. So I think those Christian right wing in America is on their agenda. They want to control other people's lives. They want to control whether gays should be able to eat together in the same restaurant with straight people, whatever, you just keep pushing. And also with the Islamic right wing, there is an agenda. Their agenda is usually focused on women. They couldn't care whether I slept with another man or, ran away from home, because they do prize masculinity a lot more than they do women. In that, they're similar to any other patriarchal. But the push where they want to legalize it and code it, like in Pakistan, their Shariat laws are not laws in Pakistan. There is a civil code, and then there is some sort of family law that falls back on Shariat. But there is a push. They do mean business when they say they will stone you, they will butcher you, they will do this, and they do it. So yeah, they're nobody's friends. I'm not trying to make alliances with them, but we need to, everybody else must speak up. So this fight for rights for gay people, etc., is also straight people's fight. It's everybody's fight. It's our survival before fanatics and religious right and all these people, because in the end they end up denying all of us our humanity.
Hinduism to sort of condemn any kind of gay behavior.
Okay, we're almost out of time. Your last question.
Okay, last question. We talked about homophobia or different level of acceptance between straight and homophobic. We've seen either gays or lesbians. People have a different level of acceptance. They accept gay men more or less versus lesbian women more or less.
Like, oh, you're just doing it so that we can watch. So that's definitely a big thing. And when I used to have long hair and look more girly, I got that a lot. But as soon as you start crossing gender boundaries, you don't get that as much, and it becomes actually more dangerous. So I would say if you're talking about a more femme woman and a gay man, then the gay man is more dangerous, because women in general aren't supposed to have a sexuality. But the minute you start transgressing gender and cut off your hair and start walking sort of manly and sitting with your legs apart or whatever it is, you are questioning the whole fabric of patriarchal society. And so then they don't necessarily know what to do with you. It's still easier to deal with a gay man because you just beat the shit out of him, but you don't know what to do with a gay woman in that context. Sorry, I didn't.
Yeah, I see that in the community. It really depends. Where even sometimes these really, I don't think there's actually one very clear response from the society. In some places, I noticed that they're okay with me being gay because they can't do anything about it. And I noticed among this Desi community, And plus, they're used to hanging out with guys. They can make fun of you when you leave. You know, with women, they're just lost because they're not needed, you know, when she's there. So, I mean, I've noticed that among more sort of conservative friends. But in general, I mean, among, I don't want to say that everything is positive, but, you know, there is a place where it's acceptable.
I think this has to do with what Anissa's saying about gender presentation. As a single person, I think there's a lot more, I'm more threatening because I don't need a man, as one of the Bali's, I think, mother said that. And then when I've been in a relationship that looks like a proper relationship, then there's this idea of like, oh, it's kind of like marriage. And so then there's a way in which homophobia dissipates because, I mean, it's a different form of homophobia, but it's this idea that I'm emulating a marriage. And so there's some kind of, even if I don't myself feel that way at all about the relationship, there's a way in which my family or community can interpret it, which puts us in binary gender roles. Like then I become the woman, and my cousins talk to me about, do I cook for my partner? And then I mean, literally, that's what we talk about. And then the person I'm dating seems like the husband who's, you know, off making money. And so it kind of is this like very reductionist gender role that it doesn't feel, when I'm single and I do all those things by myself, I make my own money and I cook, that's a lot more confusing to people. So I think, and that's just a different form of homophobia.
The lonely gay cousin that he would have a drink with.
Yeah.
You know, and then I'm like, hi, this is Robert. And he's like, who's that Robert? And I was like, that black guy. And he's like, that's the guy you were going out with? And he's like he just stands there in Jackson Heights. And I was like, okay, fine. I'm never going to bring him back. But he was, you know, it does change some of the...
So do any of you have any closing thoughts you want to leave our audience with? Or I think
just it's really great to see all of you, and thank you very much for staying, and it means a lot because we're trying to get the word out, and hopefully you will also, for those of you who are straight, also like move on and open tolerance. That didn't come out right, but you know what I mean.
Thank you. I'm glad that we came. I didn't know actually initially what to say because usually I talk to mostly, if it's a panel, it's with other LGBT people. So we don't have to talk about certain things because we all assume that we all know about homophobia. We all know about how our families treat us. We all know whether it's nature or nurture. So those questions don't come up. So it's nice to actually look at them from a different perspective.
Well, I'd say it's a very fruitful discussion and a good exchange of ideas. I think it's very, very important, significant.
So I want to thank the panelists for all of your